Hello, welcome to Scottish Summit 2021 and welcome to this session on developing SharePoint Framework solutions for the enterprise. Firstly, thank you very much to our generous sponsors, ScriptRunner, DQ Global, Proximo 3, RedSpear, Agilicis, and Hitachi Solutions. Thank you very much for your support. The agenda for this session is we will see the SharePoint development history, how the SharePoint has evolved over the years. Then we will look into the SharePoint framework or the SPEx concept. What is mean by that? And then we will go beyond SharePoint, like see how the SPEx can be used beyond SharePoint for extending it to Microsoft Teams, consuming the Graph APIs, even how we can consume the Power Automate using SPFX. And once we are covered with that, we will create or we will explore um, use case by which we'll be able to see all of these pieces together. A quick introduction of me, myself, Nanddeep Nachan. I am from Pune, India. I'm Microsoft MVP for Office Apps and Services, as well as Microsoft Certified Trainer. Mostly I'm working on SharePoint Office 365, author of a couple of books on SharePoint Framework, as well as SharePoint Hybrid. And here are a few social handles to get connected with me.
Hello all, myself Smita Nachan. I am a newborn Microsoft MVP for Office development. Apart from that, I am a Microsoft certified trainer. I am author of this one book and I'm mainly working with SharePoint and Office 65. So here are some of the social handles by which you can get in touch with me. So now let's see some SharePoint development history. So SharePoint is evolving over the years. The SharePoint Classic experience was introduced in late 2002, and since then Microsoft continued adding new features on top of it. However, around the year 2017, Microsoft rolled out a new modern SharePoint based on new modern up-to-date web technologies. So modern SharePoint appeals to users with a fresh look and a new modern experience, which is designed using modern web technologies. It works responsively on mobile devices and provides overall usability features. So before we deep dive into modern SharePoint, let's look back in history to see how SharePoint has evolved over the years. So SharePoint 2007, which is called as MOS also, so supported the full trust server-side development. Over the years, the focus of development gradually shifted from server-side to client-side. The server and client-side development have their own advantages and limitations. In the days of MOS, custom solutions were developed using full trust or farm solutions, which is supported the packaging and deployment of SharePoint customizations. The development approach was known as the SharePoint Solution Package, which bundled native .NET code and files with a .WSP extension. It contained a set of custom web parts, web templates, timer jobs, event receiver, and they are written in server side languages like C Sharp. So the server side code had full permissions on the SharePoint farm. The SharePoint solution packages were formed using features which could be turned on and off on SharePoint sites. One or more features were packaged together and deployed to SharePoint at various defined scopes like a farm, web application, site collection, or a single site. The full trust farm solutions enable developers to customize or extend SharePoint as per the business demands. As the code runs directly within the SharePoint server, the poorly designed code can affect the performance negatively, which might affect each and every application running as a part of that SharePoint farm. So the full trust farm solutions had imposed security concerns and risk as they had a full permissions on the SharePoint farm. So the SharePoint Farm solutions are still supported for all SharePoint on-premises version from 2007, 2010, 2013, 2016, and 2019. However, from the future capability perspective, it is not advisable to build SharePoint Farm solutions. So now let's look at something about SharePoint 2010, which are the sandbox solutions. So sandbox solutions are considered a subset of the farm solutions code deployment model. So the sandbox solutions are more targeted to the specific site collection in SharePoint. It enables an individual site collection administrator to install and maintain custom solutions without the involvement of a farm administrator. So the sandbox solutions had access to a limited subset of APIs, namespaces within the server side object model, and Microsoft .NET framework assemblies. Later, Microsoft introduced the new SharePoint app model and eventually deprecated the use of custom managed code within the sandbox solution. The app model was commonly used instead of a sandbox solution managed code scenario. So to start with the deprecation cycle, only the declarative markup in the form of XML and JavaScript was allowed in sandbox solution, which was famously known as no-code sandbox solutions. Over the time, all types of sandbox solutions were deprecated. So let's look at the SharePoint 2013, that is app or add-ins model. So the app model offers more flexibility and decouples SharePoint from the app runtime. It gives the ability to run the code in the external environment of your choice, that is IIS website or Microsoft Azure web apps. So it is mainly supported by two types of deployment models, namely SharePoint hosted and provided hosted. So the SharePoint hosted deployment type represents a way to deploy client-side lightweight apps to SharePoint which contains no server-side components. They use SharePoint's data structure, including the separate subsite, which we called as app web, and the actual SharePoint site, which we called as host web. The user interface had to be built using CSS, HTML, and JavaScript. So all assets were hosted within a web app to avoid cross-site scripting attack, thus providing more security. So provided hosted add-ins server-side components contains within an ASP.NET application, and you need to provide a separate environment to host them. This solution provided an approach to run the custom code outside the SharePoint. The add-ins infrastructure is clunky and relies heavily on JavaScript and asynchronous REST API calls or client-side object model calls to interact with the associated SharePoint context. So the add-ins runs in a separate iframe. Even as of today, the add-ins model is supported. However, it did not progress much in the past few years. So let's see some SharePoint framework in a nutshell. So SharePoint custom development gradually shifted from server side to client side with the introduction of the client side object model from SharePoint, which allow you to connect to the SharePoint site remotely. So the managed client side object model, which we call CSOM, and JavaScript object model JSOM, and REST API were being used effectively by SharePoint developers to carry out the customization. However, excessive use of JavaScript across the SharePoint sites, so inside the script editor or content editor web parts custom actions, became unmanageable. So modern SharePoint does not support direct injection of JavaScript on the SharePoint side. The customizations are only allowed using SPEx web parts. So the SharePoint framework brought in governance around this issue. So in the last few years, the SharePoint framework has been very popular and has become the first choice of modern SharePoint developers. So the SharePoint has become richer, which is very which is every release, and eventually a modern SharePoint has evolved. The SharePoint framework plays an important role in customizing modern SharePoint. At the same time, it also supports classic SharePoint. The SPEx solutions are deployed Using open source toolchains, modern UI standards, and JavaScript libraries and frameworks like AngularJS, ReactJS, Knockout.js. So the SharePoint framework is a page and web part model which provide full support for client-side SharePoint development. It also offers easy integration with SharePoint data. Also, we can extend it to Microsoft Teams. So, with the SharePoint framework, we can use modern web technologies and tools in our preferred development environment. That could be Windows, Linux, or Mac OS, and build productive experiences and apps which are responsive and mobile ready. We can also use modern JavaScript web frameworks, tools, and libraries to build SPFX web solutions. Uh, SPFX is generally available in SharePoint Online. It also supports on-premises from SP 2016 onwards. So please note that in order to start using SPFX in the SharePoint Server 2016, you will need to install SharePoint 2016 Feature Pack 2 on the server. So on the other hand, for the SharePoint Server 2019, SPFX is supported out of the box without any installation of any prerequisites.
Okay, so now that we have a background of SharePoint framework, what is mean by that, the history behind the SharePoint framework. Now let's jump into the SharePoint story of SPFX. So when it comes to any of the SharePoint sites, mostly it is used for storing your content in the form of list or again in the form of libraries. So we have most of our content going inside list or libraries, and then we have something called as this SharePoint framework, which help us to create modern solutions on top of SharePoint, and again maybe using SharePoint as a data source in the form of list or the libraries. And using this SPFX, we can develop our solutions which will be able to read out from the list or libraries and showcase that in a good fashion to your end users. At the same time, also we can create this SPFX web part as a configurable web parts by which we'll be able to configure the properties, and based on the configurations, they will be able to present the content to the end users. So this is how SPFX works inside SharePoint. But again, this is not just the limitation with the SPFX. We can obviously use this SPFX beyond SharePoint, and then SPFX can be used across your enterprise for developing various solutions with Microsoft Teams, Graph, even with Power Automate and the Outlook. So firstly, let's talk about Microsoft Teams. So whenever we are building m- solutions using SPFX for Microsoft Teams, we can obviously create Teams tab using SPFX. Even we can create the personal apps which are kind of personal to each of the user in Teams. And again, recently even we can start building these messaging extensions for Microsoft Teams using SPFX web part. Then we can consume all the graph APIs right within SharePoint framework, so that we'll be able to interact all across Microsoft 365 platform. And then we'll be able to showcase the data as well as we will be able to update the data right within the SharePoint framework solutions. Again, it is not just limited to there, but even we can go beyond, call the Power Automate flows from SPFX solution, so that it will help us to have all of the automation build maybe at a one click, so that for example, once we click any button inside SPFX, it may go ahead, call the Power Automate and help you to automate your process. Again, it does make its existence into the Outlook. So in the Outlook web version, we can create the add-ins using SPFX. So in a nutshell, it's like, for example, if you have one solution built in SPFX, it can be extended all across the enterprise. So let's see like how we can do those. So firstly, let's talk about Microsoft Teams extensibility with SharePoint framework. So when it comes to extensibility point, we have various benefits of using SPFX as a platform for Microsoft Teams tab. So firstly, that the development model is very much similar to SharePoint framework web parts. And then again, any of the web part can be exposed as a team tab or as a personal tab inside Microsoft Teams. The SPFX offers different scoping options to expose the SPFX web part as a custom tab or as a personal tab. And then your tab will be executed in the context of underlying SharePoint site behind the specific team. So this means that you can take the advantage of any SharePoint specific APIs or functionalities in your web part. So let's see what are the three type of solutions that we can build using SPFX for Microsoft Teams. So first one is building the Teams tab with SPFX. So with the release of SharePoint Framework version 1.8, Microsoft introduced this possibility to build the tabs in Microsoft Teams using SPFX solutions, which means any of your SharePoint Framework solutions can now be easily ported to Microsoft Teams without any need for external services. And the values which are specified in the supported host property decides how user will be able to work with your web part. So for example, now if I go to my SharePoint site here, and this is the web part that we have developed for SharePoint. So when it is running inside the context of SharePoint, it is showing the data which is only specific to SharePoint. So for example, here it has detected that it is running inside SharePoint site, and this is the title of that site wherein it is hosted. The same way, for example, if we take ahead this web part and host it inside SharePoint, sorry, within Microsoft Teams, it detects that it is right now running inside the context of Microsoft Teams, and then it starts showing the data which is specific to that particular team. So in that case, now that it has detected that it is running in the context of Microsoft Teams, and right now it is sitting inside this team called as Busted Minds. So the same web part can be used in a SPFX or in a SharePoint as well as in Microsoft Teams. So this is how we can build only one solution, but again, it can be extended for both SharePoint as well as Microsoft Team. Secondly, that we can build the personal app with SPFX. So as a part of SPFX version 1.10, you can also publish your SPFX solution as Microsoft Teams personal app. So the personal app in Microsoft Team is an app that a user can install, and then it can be accessed through the left trail of the Microsoft Teams app. So similarly, it can be configured from the supported host, and then it can be used as a personal app inside Microsoft Teams. But the more beauty comes when SPFX web part can be used as a messaging extension inside Microsoft Teams. So again, with the release of SharePoint Framework version 1.11, it's supposed to host our SPFX web part as Microsoft Teams messaging extension. So this offers more power to the developer so that they can now extend SPFX web parts to Microsoft Teams as a messaging extension. So let's deep dive into this topic mostly, that how we can use this SPFX web part as a messaging extension. So in this situation, we are going to create one sample demo wherein we will see like how we can create something called as Planet Explorer using this kind of a scenario. So Planet Explorer is something like we have various planets. We will show the information of that planets as you see in this particular diagram. And once you click on that particular planet, it will show more specific information about that planet which we are interested in. So to build this solution, what we will need is we will need a bot. We will need Microsoft Azure Web App, obviously the SPFX web part, and then Microsoft Teams to host this entire thing. So let's get into all these things one by one. So firstly, let's talk about bot. So whenever we will create a bot, firstly we will start with the bot channel registration, and then we will have our own channel registration done through which bot will be able to interact with the users. Secondly, that we will develop a solution using your teams, so which is again kind of a human generated solution which will help us to develop these solutions for Microsoft Teams as well as even for SPFX. And then we have something called as Microsoft Azure Web App, wherein we will host that solution which will serve our request. So to start with, let me go to my Azure portal. So here we already have one bot channel registration created as your Teams Planet bot. So this is the channel registration that we have, and then after that we have channelized this particular channel registration for Microsoft Teams so that it can serve all of the requests to Microsoft Teams. Secondly, that we have built a solution using your Teams, which will help us to create a bot for our functionality. So in this case, we want to show all of the planets that we have. So all of that information is coming from this JSON file. So each item in this JSON file denotes that particular planet with the ID, name, summary, and most of the specific information about that planet. And then what we do is we showcase this information um, inside SPFX web part, as well as even we use it to query the information which is being kind of passed on by the user. And then we have that application registration done, or not the application registration, but at least we have that application or the web app ready in Microsoft Azure, which hosts this entire solution. So this is how the bot is configured. And then secondly, we have this SharePoint Framework solution, which is built with SPFX version 1.11. And then again, when we are building this web part with SPFX version 1.11, we can enable them to be exposed as Microsoft Teams tab, personal tab, or even a messaging extension. So to expose your SPFX web part as a messaging extension, you don't need to use any specific host in the supported host property. Instead, all what you can do is to extend the Teams manifest in your SPFX solution with something called as a compose extension. So for example, if I go to my SPFX solution here, we have this manifest JSON created. Oh, sorry, here we have this manifest JSON created, and inside that we have these compose extensions, which will help us to showcase this SPFX web part as a messaging extension inside Microsoft Teams. So the key piece of information is the URL in the task info that we have, and which must match the URL specified here and the component ID query string parameter, which is set to the ID of SPFX web part. That should be exposed in the messaging extension. So then what happens is we will deploy this SPFX solution, and then it will be ready for us to use. So to deploy this SPFX web part, what we can do is we can have the two commands run, which is gulp bundle and gulp package solution. Ship is for the shipment for the release. And then once we have that SPPKG file created, we can upload that to SharePoint tenant app catalog. And then the zip folder that we have inside Teams folder inside SPFX solution, it can be uploaded to Teams. So once we do that, we will be ready with the solution which can run on top of SPFX. So for that purpose, for the demonstration, I will go here, and once we click new conversation here, we should be able to see this Graph Explorer or this Planet Explorer here. Once I click that Planet Explorer, this will open up a window which is nothing but our SPFX web part, which is right now showcasing all of the planets that we have. And once, for example, if I click on any of the planet, let's say, for example, Venus, it will call out our bot, and then the bot will get the information from the JSON that we have. Right now we have some error, but at least once it is able to make that communication, in that case it will go ahead and show this information back to our messaging extension. So how that communication happens is from here. So in this SPFX solution, we have this render method wherein we are showing all of the planets that we have, and whenever we click on any of the planet, what it does is it just sends out the planet name to our bot using this information. And then the bot, which is listening for this kind of an information, it can detect which planet has been invoked for, or at least which information that user want to get the planet for, and then it can get the specific planet information. It can then go ahead and create one adaptive card, and then that card will be shown as a messaging extension to our users. So this is how that kind of a communication happens, and then we are able to build out all these solutions using SPFX. So SPFX is not just limited to creating the solutions on top of SharePoint, but we can go ahead and even create these solutions which can be extended to Microsoft Teams. At the same time, also we will deep dive into how we can create the other type of solutions.
So now let's look at consuming Graph APIs in SPEx for our enterprise solutions. So if you are not familiar with Microsoft Graph, it's a unified REST API for the whole organization that allows you to get a data from Microsoft applications using a single interface. So Microsoft Graph is a gateway to data and intelligence in Microsoft 365. It provides a unified programmable model that you can use to access the huge amount of data in Microsoft 365, Windows 10, and Enterprise Mobility plus Security that we call EMS. So you can use this huge amount of data in Microsoft Graph to build apps for organizations. So Graph API can be accessed via single endpoint, which is graph.microsoft.com. We can use the tool aka.ams/ge, that's Graph Explorer, to easily test out graph endpoints. So let's look at the permissions types. So before we start using Graph APIs, let's understand the permission types and their usage, because whenever we are creating any SPFX solutions, permissions types are very much important here. So there are two types of permissions. User delegated permissions are useful when there is a user present in front of the keyboard, and if there is no user around you, you need application permissions. So user delegated permissions means the app is allowed to do the things the app is allowed to do, intersected with what the user is allowed to do. If you use the application permissions, what you are saying is give that application access to all the resources in the entire tenant. It is a little risky and you should think twice before asking for that permission as an app author. So the important to note that admin consent is required for both user delegated and application permissions. Let's look at how we can consume the Power Automate from SharePoint solution. So the Power Automate is a service that helps you to create automated workflows between your favorite apps and services to synchronize files, get notifications, collect data, and many more things. So you can easily call Power Automate Flow from your SPFX solution. Let's go step by step how we can achieve this. So here is a code snippet. Firstly, we will start by taking URL to Power Automate Flow. Once we have the URL with us, so the next thing is we should work on the request header. We will create the request header with content types as application JSON, and then we will include body and request headers to it. Once we have the request header with us, we will make a call to Power Automate and post our request. Now that we have understanding of Graph API as well as Power Automate and how to use them in SharePoint Framework solutions, now to take this understanding further and let's build one use case. So the use case I'm going to demonstrate is about managing your Office 65 groups with SPFX. So Office 65 group is the fundamental membership service that drives all the teamwork across Microsoft 365. Once in a group, we can get benefits of the group connected services like shared Outlook inbox, shared calendar, SharePoint site, Planner, Power BI, Yammer, and Teams. So now let's see functionality based on user role. So there are certain user role associated with this functionality. So for example, for any of the public group, for owners can manage the group. So members can only leave the group and anyone else will be able to join the group. So for groups with private visibility, owners will be able to manage the group, member will be able to leave the group, and for rest of other users, since it is a private group, they will able to request to join that group. Then owner will get the request, then he or she will approve that request. Then only that particular requested member will be a part of that private group. Now let's see how to join the group. So for example, if you want to join the public group, we have all the group listed here, and here the visibility of that group which is a public. So joining the public group is really very simple. So you just have to click the join group icon and you will be get joined to that group. So in the background, we are making the rest call and we will explore that rest call when we have a look at the code. So next thing, let's see for how to join the private group. So joining the private group is different as compared to this public group, because in this case, we will request to join the group and the owner of that group will get an email to approve the request. So once he or she approves this request and submit it, the user who has requested the access will able to join that group. Now that this user has approved, so if we go back to this user has requested is a now part of that private group. So here you can see how it looks in an email format. Yeah. So the next one is how to leave the group. So leaving the group is really very simple. So you just have to click on leave a group icon and you will able to leave that group. Again here we are making the graph API call in the background, which we will be see when we are going to code. So now let's see how to create a new group. So the creation of new group is again we are capturing few fields like name, description, visibility. Then you can see there are public and private as we explained. Then we do have owners and members that particular group. And once you submit this request, again using the graph API, we are creating that group. So with this, let's get into the demo part. So we have this SPEx solution deployed to SharePoint. This solution lists out all of the groups are present in Office 65. Along with the group, it displays its group icon, title, and once you clicked on the title, it will take you to SharePoint site associated with that group. If this group is connected to Microsoft Teams, so by clicking this icon, you will be able to open a Microsoft Teams for this group. Then we have visibility for this group also. It could be a public or it could be a private. And then we do have some description for it. On the right hand side, we have an icon. So depending on what type of group this is and what permission you have for that particular group, you will able to manage the group, join the group and leave the group. Since I am a owner of that group, I can see the manage group options also. So once I clicked on the manage group, it will take me to the admin portal, and from there I will able to manage the group. So I've already clicked over here. So over here from the admin portal, you can see how it looks, and from here you can just do all this type of management. So the second thing, let's take a simple example of public group. So for the public group, we have an option here to join the group. So for example, if I click this button on the join group, it makes a graph API call and help me to join that group. So now I have joined that group. If I click again on this button, I will able to leave that group. So it's really very simple operation with this public group. So now let's on move to some complicated ones, which is the private group. Because private groups cannot be joined without the approval from administrators. So we can have one group here, which is the private group. So once I mouse over here, we get a request to join the group. So let's go ahead and click on this request. So now that this particular request has been sent to the owner of this private group, and I already know who is this owner for this group. So what happens in the background is that we have a flow which is running. So once we click that button, it triggers this flow, and the HTTP request to join a group is trigger. What it does, so it gets the group owner using a graph API. It will return you all of the owner of that particular group. So once we have the owner, we compose the approval email and send the email for their approval. Then the approval process starts. Each of the owner gets an email for the approval process based on the what decision they take, like approve or reject. So for example, if it's rejected, then we simply sending out an email notification to the requested user that your request has been rejected. And if it's approved, then in that case, we add that user as a member of that group. And again, over here, we are using a graph API. So over here, we are making a post call to add this particular user to the group. And once it is a part of that group, we send an email saying that the request has been approved. So with that background, let's go to the user email. Okay, let me refresh. Okay, so uh, with that, we will receive one email for joining this private group. Let me run it manually to save the time. And till the time it is running, I will explain you what is exactly happening. So once we run this flow, once it get run successfully, after that we are receiving, that user is receiving one email for joining that private group. And okay, so from here, so once owner is approving that request, then user will also get email for the approval, and if it's reject, then it is not getting added over there. So now let's come to the user who has requested and refresh the page, and we can see on the SharePoint side if the user is part of that private group or not. Yeah, so still our flow is running, so trust me, it will get added into that private group. Okay, so this private group approval contains the two major things: the graph API call to get the owners and send them the request, and second one is to add the user as a member to that private group. And again, we are making this operation from Power Platform using a Power Automate. So now you have seen this. So let's go to the code. So the first thing is permission for this SPEx solution. In the package solution.json, let me go to this package solution.json. So we have specified all of the permission those are needed to run the solution. Again, make a note that choose wide the permission that you will give everyone from this SPEx solution, as those will be application permission. Next thing is that we have various React based components for showing the list of groups. And then we have a React component for creation of new group. Then we have a main component which holds the other components. So these are the three major React components we have. So the major part here is in the service from where we are making the various graph API based calls. So for example, to get a groups, we will make this graph API call to get all of the groups. To get members, we will make the graph API call again. To get the owner group, we are making a graph API call. Same thing for specific graph API for adding the member. Then specific graph API to get the user ID, and then specific graph API to remove the member. Then lastly, we have provision here for calling Power Automate Flow from our SPFX solution. Yeah. So from here, we are making this HTTP post call to flow URL, which is coming from the web part property as a configurable property. And we are making call to that flow for request to join that private group. So this was some short walkthrough to this code. And
Right. So means at least we saw like how we can create the solutions using SPFX. But again, just one thing to note that all of these solutions are not just limited to SharePoint, but we can extend all of these solutions beyond SharePoint. That means we can reach all of these enterprise-wide apps and services using SPFX. So we explore like how we can create this SPFX solution right within SharePoint, by which we'll be able to consume the data inside of SharePoint in the form of SharePoint list or in the form of SharePoint documents. We can surface all that data inside SharePoint sites using SPFX solution. At the same time, when we build these SharePoint solutions, we can even extend those to Microsoft Teams. Again, maybe using the Teams tab. So wherein we will be able to showcase this SPFX solution as a tab inside Microsoft Team. Secondly, even now, if you want, we can go ahead and surface this SPFX solution as a Teams personal app, which is again quite personal to the user. But again, SPFX does gives that functionality. Again, thirdly, that we can use this SPFX web part as a messaging extension inside Microsoft Teams, so that we can have the native interaction done with our users who are part of Microsoft Teams, so that they can open up the text editor. So find our messaging extension, which is developed using a SPFX solution, and from there they will be able to have the interaction done with that. But again, it does needs to develop the bots, again host that bot inside Microsoft Azure, and again having the web app onto which we will be able to host entire this application. So again, there are maybe a few more things involved from the configuration perspective, but SPFX does supports that functionality, and this functionality will be more suitable for you or more useful for you whenever, for example, in the past you have developed your SharePoint framework solutions, and now that you want to use those inside your Microsoft Teams solution. So let's say, for example, if you have built any of the SharePoint framework web part, but it is very much useful and you want to showcase that inside Microsoft Teams, it can be done very much easily. Again, for example, if in the past, if you have developed any of the solutions using JSON, JavaScript object model, they can be easily shifted to Microsoft SharePoint framework with the likely choice of your development. So it could be in a React or it could be in Angular. So overall, this SharePoint framework gives you all of the flavors that you want to bring into your solutions, which are right within SharePoint itself, or which are even within the Microsoft Teams. Again, one part which we did not showcase here, but even SharePoint framework does supports capability by which we will be able to host our SPFX web part as a kind of an add-in within Outlook. But again, that capability is only limited to web version of Outlook. But overall, SPFX supports all of those functionality by which you will be able to create all of your SPFX solutions and extend all those solutions to all of the apps and services across Microsoft 365. So I hope that gives you good insights of how you can develop your SPFX solutions, how you can expose those to various apps and services within Microsoft 365. And then, for example, if you are interested to have a look at the code part, then here we have all those sample codes which we showcased. So first one is a Planet Explorer, which is our Microsoft Teams messaging extension. And then this second link is for the group connected SharePoint sites that we created. We showcase how you can use this Power Automate as well as the Microsoft Graph, how we can leverage those inside specific solutions. So if you're interested to know more about those solutions, these are the GitHub links by which you'll be able to get this code and work along with it. So with that, thank you very much for attending this session. And the session recording will be available onto the YouTube after 14 days. So thank you very much for attending, and see you soon.